let's go ahead and start. So, hello everyone, and welcome to our webinar. Glad you can join us. I'm John Asan, the Global Technical Leader at Versasec. So on today's webinar, we're going to explore some of the product features and enhancements that we released last year. That's in 2023. And also, we have a special emphasis on the 6.10 version, which is our latest release that was recently released. So I believe these features are going to be a good value to your credential management efforts, if you haven't heard of them, of course. So yeah, stay tuned. Real quick, before we dive in, we want a smooth experience for all. So currently your microphones will be muted. We don't want you to stop you from participating, of course. So we encourage you to submit your questions through the panel. You should see a Q&A panel there. And we can tackle some of these questions during the Q&A session at the end of the webinar. Also, if you're looking to revisit today's discussion, we are going to record the webinar, and it'll be accessible eventually on the Versasec YouTube channel. All right, so before we dive into those key features, I'm going to do a quick introduction on the product for those that may be new or those that may need a little bit of a refresh of what we do. Let's dive in. So the Versasec CMS is our software, and it's our all-in-one credential management solution. And we make it as easy as possible to manage a variety of different credentials. So when we're talking about smart cards, USB tokens, FIDO devices lately, and we offer a variety of tokens and credentials that you can manage from many different manufacturers, or whether we're connecting with your user directories, interacting with the certificate authorities, and adapting to your environments, whether you are on-prem or cloud environments. The application setup is relatively simple. Also HSMs. So if you're integrating your HSM, keeping the master keys that diversify the smart card admin keys, we make that integration simple, and we offer a variety of HSMs that we integrate with. Now on the application side, in Versasec CMS, you have highly customizable workflows. The simple PIN policy configurations to advanced workflows. And we really try to cut down the complexity so you can enjoy that smooth workflow with less need for hands-on. Also, a unified experience across our applications, right? Whether you use a centralized or issuances, or you do that remotely, or you do that on premise at your office, you have flexibility there in doing so with our applications. Also, if you empower your users with self-service, those can be set up simply with our applications. In terms of repository, right, as a centralized repository, keeping tabs on your credentials with logging, auditing, and tracking for the total control and compliance. If we go to a little bit more of the advanced integrations and setups, we cover things like RFID encoding and integrations with physical access control systems, so that maybe we inform the access control system when we're issuing the device and enable that, so the access control can enable that on the physical access side, right? And same thing on revoke. Virtual credentials, when it comes to things like the Thales ID Prime Virtual, or the Microsoft Virtual Smart Card, or Windows Hello for Business, we can manage that. Printers, integration with smart card printers for the obvious encoding of the PKI and maybe the RFID part, but also for printing those layouts on the smart cards, along with batch issuance processes. Archival and recovery, being able to generate encryption keys, certificates for the users on the smart cards, and then also being able to archive and recover them so that they can decrypt that encrypted content later. Various migration paths, right, from other CMS systems, making it easy to migrate from those systems into CMS. So it's really about giving you the complete security or credential management toolkit in one package, so that you can manage those important MA security devices tightly and on the right track. On the hosting environment side, we have different options. So for those who want full control within their own IT environment, there's Versasec CMS on-premise. For customers who opt for their own private cloud setup, we provide Versasec CMS on a private cloud. So you can leverage the cloud flexibility with your own dedicated resources, and manage that yourself. We have our Versasec Cloud, which is our SaaS solution offering, managed by our Versasec experts and taking care of course, giving you the ease of that cloud-based management without the need for, maintaining this yourselves. Support and maintenance. Recognizing some different client needs, we launched their premium support tier in 2023. Customers really have gained the expanded access here to our expertise, of course, ensuring the help is readily available when they need it most, which includes faster response times, on urgent issues, urgent call availability, and the options for direct one-on-one support and scheduled meetings with our support experts. So it's about giving our customers those options and the peace of mind and when they would need it at most, of course. All right, so looking back in 2023, we added support for FIDO-only authenticators. Now, these are the security keys focused solely on providing strong FIDO authentication. I have no PKI chip involved here. And we have enabled here or extended from the PKI, we have different enrollment methods to match the operational style without sacrificing security as well. If we look at the different options, option A there, you have the operator centrally issues the device to the user, and then the user sets the PIN. This happens when an in-person meeting is possible with the end user. And then, of course, the end user would be able to utilize that FIDO token that's registered at the IDP for the registered application, and services at the IDP. Option B, again, it's centralized. The operator issues the token or the credential and then distributes that credential to the user, who at a later point would set their PIN via self-service. Could be good or ideal for remote teams that still want to maintain central issuance. The option C, you have, again, a centralized operator issues the device, and this time in batch mode, right, where the system sets and delivers the PIN. Delivery mechanisms in CMS, you have different options there and mechanisms for delivery. Right? You have the SMS, you have the option of PIN mailers, you have email as such. So you have different flexibility there. And then this is for, I would say, ideal for larger deployments that prefer centralized onboarding with no user self-service available. The last but not least is where you empower your users to self-issue their credentials and set their own PIN on the FIDO. And it's really optimal for, I would say, large deployments that prefer and allow for self-service. Maybe they have distributed teams as well in different places and such. So again, once that is done, then those devices can be utilized within the registered applications and services of the IDP. Continuing with FIDO, we added support for resident or key handle keys, setting the PIN on activate, also a new setting allowing to configure the initial user IDP password. It's also possible now to set the FIDO PIN during issuance. And if you look at that graphic there, on the issuance side, you choose, again, flexibility on how you want to issue those credentials. Secure issuances, reissuance, and revocation, of course. So again, whether you're remote, in-person, hybrid, whether you want centralized or self-service, we've got you covered on the FIDO here. On the operator side, you have access to the centralized repositories, right, for audit, management, reporting. You have a clear view of where your credentials are and who has them. You can assign also, as a super admin, let's say you would assign specific permissions for different roles. So each team member has the right level of access to the application. On the API side, we've extended what we already had for the PKI lifecycle management, right? On FIDO, on the API side, you can automate the entire lifecycles tasks of the credentials through your own systems. This means if you have changes on the user provisioning side, events like that would happen automatically, initiate the tasks and commands to the CMS side on employees leaving, changing roles, etc. Yeah, so that's really on the FIDO management. So again, every step is controlled, audited, and secure with Versasec CMS. Now, when it comes towards the IDPs, we brought the integration with Thales SafeNet Trusted Access IDP here, short for STA IDP. And what this means is when we issue FIDO credentials through Versasec CMS, it automatically sets up the user in STA. This way, the user can quickly use their FIDO credentials to log into the STA connected service, like a Salesforce, a Google, and the like. And as important, if there is changes on the user side, the user leaves or the status changes, we can revoke that FIDO credential just as easily, cutting off access to those services in STA. Again, for those who handle the setup part, you have the flexibility here. You can customize how the FIDO credentials are issued, either through Versasec CMS Agent or Versasec CMS Admin, which are operator terminals there for centralized issuance, or again, Versasec CMS User Self-Service for self-issuances. With the evolving landscape of IDPs, we also introduced an added integration with the Entrust IDaaS IDP for, again, the FIDO-based authentications. Again, the collaboration allows us to add users and manage the FIDO authenticators more effectively from issuance to revocation, and it's a significant step there for the IDP management stuff with FIDO. Now, some limitation here, we can currently add an authenticator during the creation of the user, but we cannot add it if the user is already existent in the IDP. This is being worked on currently, and so stay tuned. We will have more developments of this in the future. So the past year, we've broadened the range of the credentials supported by Versasec CMS software, ensuring that we meet the diverse needs of our customers. The Thales SafeNet e-token FIDO, that's the FIDO only token. The Thales SafeNet e-token Fusion, so combines FIDO and PKI capability, and then offering the flexible security with and without the common criteria certifications there from Thales. And we have our partner GSEC and Devrient, that is going to be the StarSign product line, which is key fob, the USB token, the PKI card, which is the standard conventional smart card, the wristband for wearable security. And these devices are PIV and FIDO capable. Currently, we only support the PIV portion, not the FIDO as of yet. You can stay tuned on developments in the future for that. From Swissbit, the iShield key with FIDO, and the FIDO only token, the blue one there. The iShield key with FIDO and PKI PIV merges the FIDO with the added security of the PIV, catering to more specific security requirements there. Enhancing on our YubiKey management and CMS, we can now also manage the interfaces and adjust, let's say, enable or disable the interfaces for both the USB and NFC portions of the YubiKeys. So you have greater control over the access to those specific interfaces. Now, also have a protection with the lock code, which I'll also speak about. Couple of advantages here, right? You can, for example, prioritize on the stronger authentication methods and then keep those enabled while you disable the weaker authentication methods. It also minimizes challenge to the IT. You know, when users might grab the YubiKey manager and you know, enable, disable, and play around with those settings. It also strengthens security by reducing reliance on less secure authentication options. What we've also introduced here is the protection part of it. So you have a lock code feature. So the administrators, the CMS admins, can set either a dynamic or a specific lock code for each device. And you would go into the Versasec CMS credential management template, or card template as we call it, and then you can enable these settings there. And for those who are already using YubiKeys, you would just need to tweak the template. The users will receive an update notification. There's a card update. We have in our knowledge base, we have steps for this. So I'd encourage you to look and search through our knowledge base or reach out to our support on the YubiKey interface management on setting that up if you have questions. One important note here. So the USB PIV remains constant. We're not disabling that, as it's crucial, of course, for the CMS management portion. Thales ID Prime Virtual with RFID. So this solution combines the virtual smart card technology with RFID functionality. The Thales ID Prime Virtual is a smart card securely stored on a server and then can be loaded onto a PC when user attempts to log into that device. And so normally to authenticate, the user would authenticate into that IDP using their username and password. And then once authenticated, the virtual smart card would be loaded or inserted onto that machine so that users then enter their PIN to complete the authentication process. So you might have scenarios we have shared workstations, like in factory environments. So finding that relevant virtual smart card can sometimes be time consuming. So to enhance on the experience, we've combined this with the integration of the RFID and NFC. So these tags contain a unique user ID, and by walking up to and tapping the RFID tag on the RFC reader of the device they are logging into, the user's ID Prime Virtual Smart Card would be loaded, and then the user would enter their PIN for authentication. So the value of this solution lies really the ability to provide the strong authentication by combining both PKI and RFID contactless chip functionality in a single credential, so that users can leverage the RFID functionality, their existing one, from the physical access facility, and easily use that to log into their workstation by tapping on the NFC reader, followed, of course, by entering their PIN for strong certificate-based authentication. Expanding our list of the CA certificate authority integrations in Versasec CMS. The first one there is the Horizon certificate authority provided by EverTrust. So as with other CAs, with this CA, we can do certificate management from issuance to revocation from that CA. And the next one up there from the MTG. So that's the certificate authority provider from MTG. One notable aspect on the MTG is that we take the additional step of creating the user within the CA. And that's an important part of how the process is structured with this particular CA if you're using that CA with Versasec CMS. On the Nexus, this was more of an enhancement, as we already supported the Nexus CA. So this was to support their latest version at the time, which was 8.7.1, as well as an added feature of setting the SID, or the strong ID, which is the important part of ensuring the secure connection between the certificates and their designated users. So that's a good one there if you're using Nexus CA. Expanding our list of the smart card printers that we support for the obvious contact and contactless encoding, smart card printing, getting your layouts printed on those smart cards so that you could utilize it as a badge. Smart card batch processing, meaning you could stack the smart cards in the printer, and then through CMS you can perform those issuances and big batch process. Again, expanding the list for customers to choose in terms of integrating with different smart card printers in CMS. So there was a reminder last year that the smart card authentication certificates would be denied for authentication if they do not have an SID or stronger ID alt securities identity mapping. This was from Microsoft KB article last year. However, they extended this until February 11th, 2025, looks like. So on the CMS side, the customers have the tools at hand, I would say, to perform either reissuance, and hopefully they have those workflows in place already. From the other side, they can also perform the mapping between the user and the certificate from their AD side, let's say. Now, for us to assist the customers a little bit more, we've provided a simple tool that helps them evaluate their environment, specifically their environment in relation to the smart card credentials that we manage. And this tool enables the customers to decide where their data needs to be imported in order to establish the mapping for their certificates. So a little help from us on this. The REST API. So we introduced the new REST API last year as well for integration into Versasec CMS lifecycle tasks to streamline and automate the issuance revocation processes directly from CMS side. Now, this was an extension to our existing APIs. We have, say, on server side, SOAP API, and on the client side, the COM API. We also had a WebStar on the server side as well. So we've expanded, of course, to add the REST API. Certificate repository management. So on here, some changes within the application itself. We've added a shortcut to the managed certificate repository. And that is, for those of you who know the CMS well enough, that's within the smart card repository view. It'll give you quicker access to the certificates that you manage. Now, we've introduced that certificate transaction repository as well, which is a dedicated space that logs all transactions relating to managed certificates and the credentials that we manage, of course. So that really significantly improving that audit trail there. And within the transaction repository, we've also implemented a feature where there's really a fresh permission role that allows you to control who can access this repository. And then you can also configure different columns to those preferences to filter entries, either manually or by linking it from other repositories as well. So some important points here. These updates are really about making the certificate management portion, the CMS, intuitive, accessible, and then of course secure for your admins that have access to it. System notification. So we have some tailored operator notifications. Now we recognize that not all operators would need access to every system status or notification. So we've made it configurable. And now you can specify which notification an individual operator or a operator role can view. For instance, if an operator's primary task, let's say, is handling only lifecycle processes, meaning they're doing centralized tasks on behalf of users on the smart cards and credentials, then they don't necessarily need to be overwhelmed with notifications about license, backend connections, or other system side tasks. Customizable license warnings as well. At the same kind of level, there is different requirements around, who should see license warnings, things like that. So you can decide now when you want to be alerted based on what makes sense for you on the license warnings. All right, so moving on to our latest release, that's Versasec CMS version 6.10. Again, expanding our list of the credentials we support in Versasec CMS. The Thales lineup there is the Thales 5110 CC. It's a new version of the existing 5110 plus CC, which gives you the updated common criteria certifications with this new token. The Thales ID Prime FIDO Bio. This is a smart card with built-in fingerprint reader. It is a FIDO only card, and we do not currently do anything with the fingerprint portion, so we don't enroll in the fingerprint. That's done natively when the fingerprint is used, for the authentication side. However, you could stay tuned to that, as we are looking into this further and looking into possibilities of adding fingerprint enrollment or utilizing the fingerprints, but that'll be at a later release. Insurity, so that's going to be the Insurity Thin-C Auth Bio Pro, which is a PIV and FIDO device, also with fingerprint. This one we currently only integrate with the PIV applet, no FIDO and no fingerprint as of yet. And adding on to the GND star sign product line, we also support the FIDO only card as well now. The Yubico UBHSM. Now we added support for the UBHSM, which is a USB HSM that you plug into your server. It's lower cost than the traditional HSM, but limited on capability, of course. Still pretty relevant for those that want to protect the Versasec CMS master key with an HSM. Our latest firmware is needed for this. That's 2.3.2 or higher for it to work with Versasec CMS. Also, the firmware is not yet FIPS certified, which is something I think that's coming in the future. Pretty interesting for small projects where you don't want to commit to a full HSM, I would say. Linked custom data to store and synchronize user data from your Active Directory inside of Versasec CMS table in the application. So these data can be included in the credential search and can be configured to be shown in Versasec CMS repository. This is really a relevant feature if a customer wants to search for the credentials using other criteria other than just a common name field, let's say. So the expiring days here. So this one would let you search and view how many days are left before the certificates, pins, and credentials expire, rather than just having the expiration date. Now, it's a change that makes planning and tracking a little more easier. And then you can find items based on how soon they expire. Right? So when using the number of remaining days as your search criteria. So it's good, particularly useful for prioritizing updates and renewals, I would say. When it comes to reporting as well, these new searchable fields are in our database, so you can create more targeted reports. You can customize reports to focus on the expiring within the specific time frame, giving you, let's say, a clearer picture of your upcoming tasks. The service heartbeat extended and added to the REST API so that you can monitor the services and to alert you if something is not running. And of course, interesting for those that want to monitor the status of the Versasec CMS server components here. Credential custom data management. We've taken our usual management or credential management features a step further with the ability to write custom data on smart cards in text format. So this means you can personalize a smart card in addition to the PKI, FIDO stuff and all that. You can personalize a smart card with specific information for, let's say, each user. Also, to ensure security there, we've made sure that this data, when written, is verified as coming from and signed by the authorized personnel or the operator that's handled it. So you can imagine different possibilities here. For example, you can use the custom text on the card as an additional layer of verification for the user. And that's just one example. And but we are exploring other use cases here where this feature could be valuable. Currently, it's more tailored and unique to specific projects. KIP permission check. So in order to explain a little bit about this one, I'll have to explain a little bit what is existing in CMS in in terms of checking permissions. So example, if you want the operators to issue smart cards to the users in a specific department or office or group, you could limit the issuance permissions by checking the AD group membership permission. So AD group membership, let's say. So as an example, if the operator and user belong to the same group in AD, that operator will be allowed to issue a credential to that user. Now, coming to this feature, let's say that the end user is moved out of that group or is disabled for whatever reason, and the CMS admins may not immediately be aware of this, or there might be a delay in this. Hence, they would not be able to revoke or retire since the user is no longer member of that group. So to prevent this from happening, we've added a feature to skip the permission check during a revoke, retire lifecycle task in CMS, so that we can ignore if the user is no longer in that AD group. Filtering the available credential templates. This feature is for user self-service. So when you configure card templates in Versasec CMS, you can set self-service options so that end users can perform self-issuances, let's say. And once this is enabled on that template, you'd have these options show up or you'd have these the template show up in Versasec CMS user self-service applications. Now, you could potentially have multiple templates in Versasec CMS enabled for self-issuance. In that case, on the end user side, you would have the end users in our self-service application see those different templates, even ones that may not apply to them. So with this improvement or enhancement here, you can limit and specify the self-service templates available to them, making it easier for help desk on providing, of course, on them providing a guide, of course, and then there's limit chance of the user selecting the wrong template. So the IT pushes this configuration to the different machines dedicated for those specific users via a registry setting on the client side. Expanding on the permissions check. Now, although we've had permissions check from the server side, we didn't so much have a permissions check from the self-service side. So we've added this feature as well. You can specify an operator on the template, and this operator belongs to that specific group, which matches the users in that group. And then you would have the additional validation of the end user, whether they would be allowed to perform the self-service tasks. So you have more possibility on self-service side from permissions check to validate before a user is allowed to perform a self-issuance. The WebStart API for the Versasec CMS user self-service side application. So for WebStart, we're using a URI handler, and that URI handler, you're creating basically a link on your website. Then all the user does is click on a button on a website, and that task is then started in Versasec CMS user application. The available tasks are issue, reissue, change PIN, unblock PIN, and credential update that you can use. The Versasec CMS user application is required to be installed on that machine. All right. You can see it relevant. That it simplifies tasks for the users, of course, You can have your website set in your own localized languages as well. And it's a click of a button compared to having them start the application and maybe follow a guide on performing those tasks. Also can lower impact on help desk and less friction on getting users to perform their self-service tasks. Okay, so some other noteworthy mentions. We've added a functionality there showing the current running schedulers in the Versasec CMS service under option schedulers. So you have more visibility about the running background tasks in CMS service. You have the option to turn off OTP pin management on the TELUS credentials. Well, you have the hardware serial numbers of the UV keys can now be shown in decimal form. Configuration to set the number of credentials issued with the same template. Now, previously, it was either restricted or unrestricted. So restricted meant you can only issue one per that template, one credential on that same template, or unrestricted, you had no limit on how many of those credentials you can issue. So that is now configurable. Versasec CMS delayed connection when in tray mode. You can also optionally force the Versasec CMS user self-service to be online for PIN changes. And then a force PIN change before user credential self-service. So before they're able to perform a reissue or updates, you can force them to do a PIN change. Support for FIDO CTAP 2.1 credentials. This is the same functionality as with CTAP 2.0, but for the CTAP 2.1 devices, there is currently no new functionality, such as setting the minimum pin length, but this will be added in a later release. All right, finally, we come to the end of life announcements here on the TELUS Luna HSMs, the 5X and 6X versions ends on December 2024. For Windows, of course, that you might already be aware of, the support has ended for Server 2012 and 2012 R2 as of October. On the CMS side, for those systems predating Versasec CMS 6.0 on database schema versions 1 to 3, that ended last month in January 2024. And support for our SOAP client interface ends March 2024 with a 32-bit Versasec CMS server and Versasec CMS admin and agent application that ends in 2024. That reaches the end of our webinar. Thank you very much. And also, let's see if we have any questions here. All right. So I see, okay, one question. If Versasec CMS user changes their PIN offline, the change is not synchronized with Versasec CMS server, so the user cannot receive a notification. Do you have a solution for this? Type that answer. Yeah, we have a couple of things, and I think for that one, so we get to the other questions, we will come back to you with a much more detailed response. So yeah, give us a little time, but we'll come back to you on that one. Thank you for the question. Is the 5110 without CC still available? I believe it's still available. and we have a lot of customers using it still, utilizing it. Good question that we could post to Talis as well, and yeah, we can come back to you on that one. Thank you, Nebi, for the question. All right. I see no other questions. Oh, wait. Any news on incorporating the Entra ID API for FIDO? Yes, we have some definite plans to incorporate this as soon as Microsoft makes it available. So I think our product teams are in talks for this. Absolutely. Any other questions? Okay, I think we're all set. Thanks again, guys, and thanks again for joining, and have a good rest of the day.